I wanted to be an archaeologist because, of course, Indiana Jones, right? My dad goes, "Nope, you don't get paid for that," and so that dream went out the door.
All right, so Brandon, you told me before that you graduated from Iolani. So my question is, how come you're not either a doctor or a lawyer, and how did you find your way into a nonprofit work?
Okay, we're gonna have to course correct right off the bat.
Oh,
I
okay.
graduated from Punahou, so that's like
Oh,
that's like a
no, no,
shot to the
wait.
heart right
Yeah,
there, Nolan.
sorry. I know. You know what? We're gonna keep that because this
Yes,
just shows how human I am, and I'm terribly flawed. Because that is probably the worst start to an interview I've ever had. To
you know
just
what?
flat
That
out
is a
insult someone like that.
that is a great humorous moment, and my friends
Yeah.
who are in that Iolani world will appreciate, because of the amount of hate that I. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I graduated from Punahou. Yes.
You know why? Because I graduated from Pudong. We shared that, but I remember telling my wife Jamie, who graduated from Iolani, that because I kind of always have had this like fondness more for Iolani than Puno. And I was like, oh, he's such a good guy. I think he probably would have been better at Iolani. So I think I just put you in my Iolani bucket. But no shade on my fellow Puno classmates, by the way. But okay, so let's start that again. So you you graduated from Puno. So why aren't you like the CEO of Netflix or something like that? And how did you find your way into working in the nonprofit sector?
Right. That's a great question. I did not have a kind of traditional nonprofit start, so to
Oh,
speak.
okay.
So coming out of high school, I did want to go into medicine. In fact, I was
Oh.
at UH. I was in a program called the Liberal Arts Doctor of Medicine program. And what it was basically an early acceptance into JABSOM, into medical school. And there were 10 of us in there, probably about five Puno classmates. Out of those 10, I think somewhere like seven ended up becoming physicians. But in our year, they decided not to take everybody automatically. So that kind of did give me a chance to really kind of reassess, okay, what do I want to do? What's my focus?
Hmm.
I had always been interested in psychology, so that was my major. And
Oh.
pre med at UH was not a major per se, but I followed the pre med course.
Hmm.
So I ended up, just getting my degree. I worked in social services. I ended up going into business school and wanted to go back into healthcare. But how I got here is just kind of a step by step pathway. Um, may not make sense all the time, but I think with each job, with each opportunity you take, you learn from it. You kind of see what's out there, and you find what fits you. And
Hmm.
so I find myself at the company I'm with now is Aloha Harvest. I was actually introduced to it from my previous work experience. Uh, I was the chief operating officer of a hospital, and when our food service manager said, "Hey, we need to figure out what to do about food waste," I said, "Well, don't waste food." And she said, "No, no, seriously. Like, if there is food waste, we can do one of two things. Either we're going to pay someone to take it away, or we can get this company to come in and there's no charge. They take it. They're focused on sustainability." And I just stopped hearing that no charge, and I said, "Yep, them. Let's go
Yeah.
with them." So that was my introduction to this company. I kind of learned about them a little more. And when the opportunity came to join, it was a combination of knowing that the company has a great mission, being familiar with the board, being familiar with the people here who, love what they do. So that's how I found myself in here. It wasn't like I came out of Punahou just, wanting to change the world and on this sustainable mission. It was finding myself at that point after learning about it.
But you did originally want to go into medicine. So was that fueled by a desire to help people? Was that the original mission behind wanting to pursue a degree in medicine?
What really got me interested in medicine was playing sports and getting hurt, and
Oh,
having that kind of experience on the patient side. I'd hurt my back pretty badly as a sophomore in high school, and the orthopedic surgeon worked with me to get me back into better shape. Seeing that ability to affect someone's life was interesting to me. So I did want to go into one of two things, either orthopedic surgery or neurosurgery, because I've always loved kind of the working of the mind. And so going into undergrad, it was, yeah, neurosurgery or orthopedics.
so what sport were you playing, and how did you get this injury?
I played football, did track. I would love to say it was because of some intense sports injury, but it really was because we were fooling around in the weight room and I just wasn't watching my technique, and I just in an
Oh
instant,
no.
tweaked my back. And the funny thing is that was the start of it, but the point where my back really got hurt, I was just bending over on the couch, like grabbing the remote, and in coming back up, I just my back tweaked, and that was it. It was just a combination, I think, of repetitive sports injuries, and then just not watching how you hold your core firm as you're reaching for a remote.
That sounds like the kind of injury we get now in our 40s and 50s.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I sneezed and I broke my rib.
yeah.
So what was the actual diagnosis? Was it that you had like a slip disc or some kind of specific injury to the back?
I think it was just a strain. I mean, it was a
Oh,
strain bad enough to where the advice was, "Hey, you really need to kind of be cautious of this. If you take a hit the wrong way, you could
oh,
throw something out pretty badly." Um, so yeah, I mean, that was something that catches your attention, especially when you're a teen. You think you're indestructible, and then all of a
yeah.
sudden you find you can't walk too well, and so. But yeah, kind of seeing that ability as the doctor to get someone from point A to point B was interesting to me.
So what was it about that moment when you were when you said you were in that program in college and they weren't automatically accepting, and you said it gave you an opportunity to kind of assess, like what was your thought process then as to what made you change your mind of let's not continue down this path and go a different way?
There was an interesting conversation that I had with a friend. At that time, as high schoolers, you are everyone wants to go into something, right? Great.
Yeah.
So a bunch of us did want to go into medicine, and when we look back at it, almost none of us did from
Oh,
that group.
interesting.
But a lot of them have gone on to do amazing things, right?
Hmm.
What changed my mind, and this is going to sound funny, is summertime, your friends come back, and we were sitting down, we are talking, and one of my friends had said, I don't think I want to go into medicine anymore. And I said, oh, why is that? And she had said, I want to have a family, I want a work life balance. At some
Oh,
point, when you're in that role, you don't get that. And I sat there for a second because that's not anything that ever had entered my mind.
yeah.
And I said, man, that's pretty interesting. Because our friends who had older brothers who were doctors, one was a surgeon and told him, yeah, don't ever go into surgery. You're never going to have a life.
Wow.
And because he was so specialized, he was like the one guy on the island that could do certain things. He
Hmm.
was always on call. I mean, that was his life for that, that point in time. So I think that really got to make you think like, do I really want to be tied into something at that point for the rest of my life, or do I want to figure out what's going to make me happy down the road?
Yeah.
And I say it's funny now because going into business, which I did go into, they will condition you basically for X amount of years that you're in this your professional life. At this level, it is your life, right? And that's kind of the understood message. I think with different generations now, that might be changing a little, but yeah, certainly going into grad school for business, they'll tell you like, yeah, you're, and especially in certain areas, like if you're going to go into investment banking, if you're going to go into any type of high management, you will be spending most of your hours at work. You're not going to be, number one focus is not going to be family, and so that's I think that was originally what stopped me from going into medicine.
Hmm.
But that's a message that still probably should resonate now in this current role.
Given that you went through that, and as you mentioned, it might not be the case, moving forward now with today's generation, what would you, I guess, say to, that up and coming next generation? Would you agree with that assessment, or are you of the mindset of like, yeah, let's change that. Let's have more focus on that balance between personal and business.
I think the balance is always going to be important. You know, now having years of experience coming up, being in charge of things. Obviously, now as an exec director, you're in charge. It's important to find out what makes you happy, right? Because no matter what, if if you have a job that's highly respected, high powered, but you're unhappy in it, then you know is that the life you want to live, right? As opposed to someone who leaves that role and finds something that really makes them happy, which may not be as respected or may not pay as well or get as much perk or benefit or whatnot.
Yeah.
But if that person's ultimately more happy doing that, then that's probably a more fulfilling life. When I talk to like my daughter, for instance, one of the things that I'll make sure, and my daughter is 12. So one of the things that I try and tell her is like, look, you're going to change your mind probably a few times because I changed my mind from what I wanted to do, and I still do. I That's one of the reasons why I went to business school because it gives you options. You have a toolkit. You use that toolkit based on what you want to do at that point.
Hmm.
But for my daughter, I said, you'll change your mind, but there are two things that I think you should focus on. Number one, um, you want to find something that's going to make you happy, right? A career that'll make you happy. But two, there is a reality that you have to find something that's going to allow you to be financially stable, right, on
Hmm.
your own. I think there's so many people who don't take both of those things into consideration that they end up trapping themselves one way or another, right? They go into a
Yeah.
career that they think they want to do because they want that successful life, and they're just miserable at it. On the other hand, there's some that go into something that feels ultimately fulfilling, but they can't make a living at it,
Hmm.
and they get trapped in their life, and then they get upset, and then
Yeah.
that's a downward spiral. So I try and focus on that. I'll say it's not important to make up your mind right now. You're young. Just kind of see the pathway you want to go down and try and follow it and see what you want to do. Right.
It's so interesting that you have this perspective and that you're passing it on to your daughter because growing up, especially in a Asian family, it was like, better figure out what you're going to do and stick with it, and doesn't matter if it's hard, just you're going to be miserable anyway, kind of like that kind of attitude. And for me, as I grew up and throughout my career, I kept changing and doing different things and such, and it was a source of stress for my parents. My mom was just like, you got to figure this out. You can't be like switching jobs and careers so often. Like, people aren't going to hire you. Like, it was a very sore subject for her to see me go through it. But at the same time, I just couldn't stick to these things because it wasn't what I felt comfortable in, or it wasn't fulfilling.
Right.
Did you have a similar experience being, raised in an Asian household, or were your parents kind of the same mindset of you of like, hey, you just got to figure out what's right, and give you that kind of advice?
I think my parents were fairly confident in the fact that I would find a way, right?
Mm.
Find my way. Um, and it wasn't anything. Well, when I was first thing I remember was like I was three, somewhere around there, between 3 and 5, and I wanted to be an archaeologist because, of course,
Oh, of
Indiana
course, right?
Jones, right?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
Indiana. My dad goes, "Nope, you don't get paid for that." And so that dream went out the door. For the longest time when I was younger, I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be an electrical engineer and be an astronaut, right? Because space was awesome. Ellison Onizuka was a huge hero growing up.
Mm,
And then I got into that older age when you hit seventh grade and figure out, boy, my math is not where it needs to be. I don't think that's going to be where I go. So it did end up where you take a little bit of time, you figure out. But I think my mom was actually recently talking about this, where she said, I was never really worried that you would find what you wanted to do, because I always thought you had the drive to go do something, right? So
um,
I'd never had that really true pressure. I think they just wanted to make sure, like, okay, well, you're happy and you're working hard. That's really
mhm.
what counts.
Do you know of what examples like that she would have seen as proof that you had this drive early on? Like, obviously, you were still young, so it had to be shown in different ways, not like, oh, in your career yet.
Mhm.
What were things that you were doing that gave her that kind of comfort in knowing, hey, this guy's got drive?
I This is the part that I don't want to sound like conceited or anything, but I always did well in school, and even from like kindergarten age, you're in those gifted and talented classes, and you're doing well, and for me, the big wake up. I went to public school, right? So from kindergarten to sixth grade, I went to public school, and then you're I always talk about you're the big fish in the small pond, right?
Yeah,
I had great classmates though, and they've done awesome things too. But then you get to Puno, right, as a seventh grader, and you're suddenly the small fish in the really big pond, and you start to see like, wow, there are like people here who just are ridiculously smart and
yeah,
gifted and talented and have more like insight and things. And wow, what have I been doing my entire life? So you have to kind of up your game. Going into high school, you're doing okay, right? You're trying to get by as best as you can. Going to college, I did well again, right? Was more focused. It wasn't like you have so many different distractions. Now it's like, okay, it's game time. You want to make sure that you do well because I have a career goal ahead. So I think it was just that. I think it was just kind of seeing different achievements, in school or in whatever, that gave them at least some comfort that, okay, well, I know you're not
yeah.
completely lost. You're maybe lost at times, but not completely.
So was it safe to say you're pretty self-sufficient? Like that's why they didn't have to ever push you or guide you in any way. It's kind of just like they see, well, he does his work, knows what he wants, gets it done.
Yeah, I think it helped being the oldest child on both
Oh,
sides for like I think 7 years. I was the only grandchild, and so I
oh,
kind of had
really?
the run of the place, so to speak.
Yeah.
So I did have that experience, kind of being on my own and doing my own thing.
Some would argue though, like being in that position, like you have all the attention and all of the pressure and stuff, but it seemed like you actually were had the experience of that you were able to figure it out on your own and guide your ship the way you wanted to.
Yeah, and I think for me it was just my personality. I think I enjoyed that. As my sister and as my cousins start to come in, then it's like, oh, now I have to share everything with everybody else, and I'm so much older than they are. Right.
um, Before I forget, you said you initially wanted to be an astronaut, an electrician. Was that right?
Electrical
Electric
engineer,
engineer. Okay,
and then the electrical engineer would lead into the becoming the astronaut.
so that's the first. Like I've heard, astronaut, NBA basketball player, all these kind of things. I don't know if I've heard too many youngsters who go electrical engineer.
Yeah,
How did that come into your mind as a goal?
I just used to like to play and create. I was always playing with Legos. I was always playing with whatever toys I could, taking them apart sometimes, trying to put them back together. I just enjoyed the process of discovery.
Mm.
And the irony is, I did want to go to Iolani. Like when I was, coming up, I
See,
wanted
I
to go
could
to
tell. I
Iolani.
could
Yeah,
sense that. I knew.
Iolani and then MIT. Those were my, kind of my path as I was elementary school
Yeah.
student. Um, but yeah, that's really the reason why.
Did your anyone in your family have that as a background?
No, my family is blue collar.
Oh,
We are
interesting.
decidedly blue collar. Yeah.
Wow. So what kind of work did they do?
So my mom actually works in the nonprofit world. That's pretty funny.
Oh,
So she was kind of the first entry point into nonprof. My dad is it's funny. I never knew what my dad did.
really?
He's a wharf clerk, so a
Wow.
longshoreman. Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's kind of where that blue collar area comes from. And I have other parts of the family who does other more professional or technical things. But my immediate family was for the most part just your typical middle class family. Nothing in that doctor realm or nothing in that engineering realm.
Wow. So they had to work really hard to get you through Punahou then.
Yeah, that's something that and my parents had me young too, right? So my
Oh,
parents
really?
had me when they were like 20. So
Wow.
I was not
Wow.
planned out. I was the surprise.
You were the
um,
blessing.
yeah, I give them credit because I had my daughter and my wife and I had our daughter a little older, right? A little older, a little more established.
Hmm.
And even sitting there going, man, I can't believe how much kids cost and
Yeah.
holy cow, we have to pay for school. Like, how is this going to work? And seeing that kind of everything that we have to go through.
Yeah.
Now it's a greater understanding for what they had to go through. So it's yeah.
Wow. So with your dad and not knowing what he did, was that because he wasn't allowed to tell you, or he just wasn't that type that would, share much with you, like
I knew
traditional
that he
Asian
was.
dad?
I knew that he was on the docks. I just never knew exactly what that involved.
Yeah. Wow. Did you ever find out? Like, did you ever get to the point where you were curious enough to ask him, and was he open with you?
Yeah, actually, and a lot of times I'd find out from other workers, right? So
Oh.
they would tell me like what exactly that is involved, right? How do basically I would have one of my jobs. I'll take a step back. So one of my jobs when I first moved back from the mainland was with a moving company down here, and that moving company was unionized, and it's the same union that my dad was in. And so we talk story, and then some of the guys down would say like, "Man, your dad was like in charge of this entire place, like
Wow.
making sure the trucks come in, knowing the containers. A very manual process. Now it's different, right? There's computers
Yeah.
involved." And he goes, "Yeah, they had to do it like manually, tracking all these things because he's been in it for 40 something years."
Dang.
So that was interesting, kind of learning that part. As I got older, as I got into more managerial discussions, the interesting conversation was more along the lines of what and how to work or how to understand your employees, right? And
Hmm.
I'll tell all young managers, like you are best served moving forward to find yourself in a situation where you have to manage a unionized workforce because you are going to understand how to dot your I's and cross your T's and go through every frustration you can as a manager. But it'll make you better, right? It'll make you a better manager. I would have, and I still do have, a lot of conversations with my dad about, um, you know, labor management issues or strategy issues or what about this? What do you think about this? I think now as an adult, right, a full-fledged adult, it makes you better to have someone who understands the other end of the table that I may not sit on, because now you can get the full picture of the discussion.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of times where you'll have, labor and management talking past each other because they don't really
Mm.
understand like what the root of the issue is.
Yeah.
So being able to kind of pick apart, hey, why would they say this or why would they do this or ask for this? helps you as a negotiator, right? Helps you as someone who is trying to find a mutual benefit or a common ground. So I think
Yeah.
as we've gotten older, yeah, those conversations definitely have been helpful.
I feel like that what you just described would be so helpful just for us in society, of asking why they feel this way or why they did this versus I think a lot of us tend to just go to push our agenda or, like you said, we're talking past them, right?
Yeah.
So that's such a great quality that is I guess you're so fortunate to have that kind of training with the access to your dad. So yeah, it'd be really interesting to see if we could somehow infuse that into more of like our everyday kind of society of how we operate, and not only businesses but in community issues and stuff like that. Do you find yourself um, trying to implement that kind of style of approach to your leadership style now in the position that you're in now?
I do think no matter what you have, union, non-union, small company, big company, the bottom line is as a leader, you always have to find mutual benefit, and you have to be able to explain mutual benefit, right? And that doesn't matter if you're talking to an employee or if you're talking to someone that you're trying to get a partnership with or a deal with. There has to be some mutual benefit there. And I
Hmm.
think that approach, at least being able to take a step to understand what or how to bring this person along with you, I think that's important, right? So a good example, sales, right? When you're doing a sales thing, and I was listening to one of the recent podcasts that came out. I think it was the Elite Parking one,
Uh-huh.
and he was talking about his sales strategy, right? And it is kind of and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but the way I took it was he's looking at how to present kind of the best way forward for both parties, right? What
Hmm.
he's going to bring and what he's going to bring to this entity, right? That they're trying to get the property for.
Yeah.
And I think that's the way you approach a lot of different business interactions. And you could, business may be a bad word at this point. Any interaction that involves you trying to um, bring someone along into whatever it is that you're planning. It has to take how is this going to benefit you? How's this going to benefit me? And how can we make this better? Right.
Hmm.
So I think that's the base root of every conversation.
Did you ever have an experience where that really hit home for you, where to this day you kind of reflect on that experience of this is where I saw how that worked so well, and why moving forward you have this belief?
I don't know if it's one experience necessarily, but I do think that it's, what you do see. Okay, well, I've seen the bad side of it, right?
Oh,
I've
okay.
seen the side where you have someone who is trying to make the sale or trying
Hmm.
to get this deal done. And it is very transactional, right? It's not, and I'll give an example where, with a previous company, we're trying to be the I guess, preferred vendor, if you want to say that. Um, and they were promising things that I said, we're really not going to be able to do that well. Like, pull back for a second. We're gonna ruin this relationship if we can't live up to what it is um, we're promising. And oh, by the way, I'm the face of this. I'm not cool with that.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and the answer, and at the time, the partners were not from here. They were from the mainland.
Oh well.
And the way that they approached things was very transactional. Right? And
Yeah.
I don't wanna make this like a mainland versus Hawaii, or I don't want to stereotype, but
Of
this is
course.
what
Yeah.
how it was presented.
Yeah.
And I said, no way, man. And I said, this is Hawaii, dude. I've grown up here. I like literally know that person's like parents. Like, we're
Hmm.
not telling them we're going to do this if I don't think that we can do this. So this is we're building a relationship. We're not doing a transaction. Like, just
Yeah.
so we're not doing that. And I think that was important, right? So I've
Yeah.
seen the bad side of it. You have to move forward with good. and there has to be mutual benefit. Because if not, what is going to make this person want to do what it is that you're hoping for, right?
Right, right. When you said that, your mom was in the nonprofit world and that was your first exposure to it, um, did you understand? Did you have like a healthy understanding of the nonprofit sector and what it was like, and that's how you came to have this, I guess, a little more confidence and comfort in moving forward in your career to jump into the nonprofit world?
I did see kind of uh, their operation, right? And what was funny is I actually ended up coming out of undergrad. Uh, I eventually worked for the same company.
Oh, really?
And so I would be in one office and my mom was on the other office, and we'd send the work over and their office would receive it and they'd be like, "Oh, look, we got your son's report. It's only a page long. It's like really short, but man, all of the information is like in there. It's so concise, right?"
Oh,
And
wow.
because for me, I'm such a stickler for like wanting things to be efficient. I like got down to a
Mhm.
science. Like everything was like there, and in one page report format. And so they would have it. They'd look at it. They'd be like, "Yep, it's all there. We're good." Um, the thing that I did get from them is watching how that little office ended up becoming a much much bigger organization. And I'll name drop at this point. So she works for Pact, and she's been with Pact for a number of years.
Oh, she's still
Um,
there.
yeah, she's still there.
Oh,
And
wow.
so it's funny because the person who said, "Hey, speak to me,"
Yeah.
works with my mom, and I had known her from that same previous organization because she was in a different office. And so now Hawaii being Hawaii, right? The worlds all
Yeah.
collide, and so she works with my mom now in this company.
Wow. That's so neat. And so when you decided to, when you were faced with this opportunity to jump on board with Aloha Harvest, what were your thoughts when you first were entertaining the idea? What was the motivation behind thinking that this would be a good move for you, and why you wanted to do it?
I think that there were a couple of points that were important to me. Number one, the relationship with the board. And Aloha Harvest has uh, a youngish, pretty well engaged board, and a lot of them have been here for a number of years. And I do know some of them from either high school or from other work experiences. So that's important. As an exec director, that's your direct report, right? You're reporting directly to the board. So I want to make sure that relationship was a good one. Number two was knowing that the mission and vision of the company is solid. And of course, Aloha Harvest has a very solid mission. We're now in our 25th year of operation. Almost every friend that I know in food service or somewhere around that arena is aware of what this company is, and to me that was pretty important. But number three was having a workforce, and it's a small group. We only have like 16 employees,
Wow.
but having this group that is dedicated to what they're doing, right? Um, I'm not someone who is in this sustainable and environmental type industry or background.
Hmm.
Um, so for me, having that group there is important because it can teach me what I need to know and what I need to kind of catch up on. Right, I know the business aspect of it, but what does this mean when we say this number, or how do we get this, or why is it that we do this? That's something that they teach me. So that was the three. It was board relationship, mission vision, and having a team that's dedicated to what they're doing.
With the mission and vision, what part of it was the thing that really spoke to you, as as a person, and your values and beliefs, that you knew this was going to be a good fit for you?
The really, and I love this as a marketing person. We have this sticker right. I don't know if it's going to actually show up and be right sided, but sorry, it's
I think it
backwards.
is.
It says waste less, feed more. And
Mm,
that is a very concise message, really the take home of what we do. Um, as I get older anyway, and I do start to hear that message of, hey, we got to do something, right? Because if we keep ruining the planet or ignoring things, or what's going to happen for our kids and our kids' kids,
yeah.
that was not something that was like super important to me when I was growing up. Now it is, because you start to see like, well, yeah, we weather's kind of nasty, like we're running out of landfill space. There's a whole number of things, and then the other part of that is the food part of it. Yes, food insecurity is a major issue. I came from healthcare, and food insecurity is like one of the top concerns. And we, as the healthcare industry, can't necessarily affect that, right? If I'm a hospital,
Uh,
I'm worried about just getting you healthy and out the door. Like what happens
right.
after that? That's not necessarily something I can control. But it is one of the major things. Whenever healthcare entities do their what's called a community health needs assessment, it's
Hmm.
basically all your hospitals, your nonprofit hospitals, need to do an assessment of what their community needs. And because of COVID, this last one, food insecurity was, I believe, number one in there, and that's
Wow.
not something that we can do at all. So this allowed me to kind of segue into that, and hopefully be able to kind of approach them to say, hey, we'd love to work with you guys on projects X, Y, or Z. What can we do to affect that? A nice segue into that would be the health centers. You have these community health centers who are in the community, who do help, work on overall food security or food choices. Because along with that is, I can give you all the candy and cookies in the world. That's not
Hmm.
going to help you, right? You
Right.
need fruits and vegetables, even if you don't want the fruits and vegetables and and fish or chicken or whatnot. That's what helps you get healthier. And so I think that was, yeah, that part of the mission and the vision really stuck out to me.
So I want to get to know a little more about the history of Aloha Harvest. You said this is your 25th
Mhm.
year of being around. What was the situation that sparked the creation of Aloha Harvest? What happened where this idea was born out of to create Aloha Harvest?
This is where I would hope that I had my staff with me, but I can take you on probably a high level look at. So in 1999, the Haoli Mauloa Foundation helped found Aloha Harvest. And I think the reason why, or what sparked it, is they did begin to see the real kind of rise in food insecurity,
Uh,
along with being aware of the environmental need, right? So there's always been this two-part mission of wanting to waste less, right? Getting a more sustainable practice where we're not having so much food waste going to the landfills, and then in turn taking that rescued food and then being able to get it to the food insecure. This was based off of a model, I believe it was called City Harvest out of New York. So it had
mhm.
already been a process in place, and they said, well, why don't we do it in Hawaii? So the ball got rolling there, to start Aloha Harvest.
I see. And so how does it work? What goes on as far as the operations of Aloha Harvest so that we can better understand the work that's being done?
So I think the easiest way to explain it is that we are a logistics partner,
Hmm.
for food donors and for the recipient agencies. So your food donor could be anything from a store, a distributor, a restaurant, right, a catering service, because we can take both prepared foods as well as stock food items. So something on the shelf that's going to hit its date,
Hmm.
we can take that. We can take your prepared foods from restaurants. Right now, because the film industry is taking off again, we do rescue food from their catering services, and that's a pretty cool experience.
Yeah,
Um,
I did a shoot and I saw how much food they had for
yeah,
everyone and I was like, "Holy smokes, this is a lot of food." Like they
yeah,
put out a huge spread.
yeah. Yeah, craft services. That I actually got the experience recently to pick it up and take it to the site. I was like, wow, this is awesome stuff. But yeah, that's one part of what we do, and we take it from there over to a recipient agency. So that
Uh-huh.
could be a food bank, that could be a food pantry, a church, a nonprofit who's out there in the community. We serve that process of getting it from point A to point B.
Interesting. How do you determine what is, I guess, the type of acceptable
Mhm.
um materials or food, I guess?
It's a little easier when you have just your stock item because you have dates, you
Uh
can kind of keep track
yeah,
of
yeah.
those. It's a little bit more secure or a little bit more, you need a little bit more food security practice when you do have these prepared items. So we do have the DOH training on food handling, but a lot of times we partner with the restaurants, and if they cannot, so what we do, because we don't have our own storage area, our own storage unit.
Hmm.
We work with the restaurants to see if we're going to be able to get it in that 4 hour window from
Hmm.
the restaurant over to the partner, or if they're going to have to cold store it for us before we can pick it up. If it's a cold storage process, we have pans that we give to the restaurants. They'll put it in these pans, cold store it in their own process, and we pick it up in the morning, or whenever it's available, and then take it over to the partner. We do have to follow those rules and regs about keeping it within that 4 hour window. It's a little trickier with that, but it's something that we take pretty seriously.
Man, for you guys to do all that with just, you said 16 people on staff, how do you guys manage that? It sounds like a lot of logistical things, a lot of travel, a lot of time.
Yeah, on any given day, we'll have 4 to 5 trucks out there in the community, and we have set routes, and occasionally the routes can be combined, just depending on how many items are expected on that day. But then again, there are times where we're going to get pallets of stuff, and so the crews have to be pretty flexible. And you could be picking up mass pallets of items, or you could be picking up a tray which hopefully weighs more than 5 pounds, and then we take it from there.
Wow. I don't know if you're at liberty to say this or not, but I would imagine that the delivery guys have built great relationships with some of these restaurants, and that they probably get like some really kind vendors who are like, "Hey, you're coming by here. I'll go hook you up with this kind of extra plate of ribs for the road."
Yeah. If you've seen our crew, you know you're looking like they look like a bunch of ragged football players sometimes, just big hulking guys, but really they're the nicest bunch. And
Oh.
that's one thing I think, as they get established in the different community partners that are out there, they're like, oh my god, so and so came, and the first time I saw him, like, wow, who's this, big scary guy? And then you find out he's a huge teddy bear, and so I think
Mm.
that's something that is really important, and I definitely appreciate.
So this sounds so awesome, and you mentioned that it's a free service to the restaurants and partners. So how do you guys get funded and sustained? Because it sounds like a lot of work that goes into this, and yet I don't see how you get supported since it's a free service. So how do you get supported from the community?
So we have a number of grants that we apply for and do get. We also have donations. We have a very small segment of some revenue generating, but that is a very minuscule amount compared to everything else. That was actually one of my concerns, in the interview process for this. I said,
Yeah.
"Wow, that's a lot of eggs in one grant basket." Um,
Yeah.
but it is what it is, right? And actually, the free of charge part of it is written into our articles of incorporation. So
Uh,
the founders did mean this to be something that would not be a revenue generating process on its own, right? Just the food rescue portion.
mhm.
So that's one of the challenges for me, is to figure out how do you keep this a sustainable operation
Right.
into the future. Because at any given point, as a grant dependent um, operation, you know, any disturbance to that could be, your entire budget is shot.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do watch very carefully, kind of what's coming down the line. Obviously, with kind of different disturbances out there, it could be a little dark and stressful at times. But yeah, we have, and that's the one thing, we do have great partners out there who have helped kind of keep us going, and so that's something that we appreciate.
Well, being around for 25 years, I got to imagine that the organization has had to adapt and change and grow in different ways. And you're mentioning how, your style is making everything efficient, dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and making things as good as possible. Has there been things that you either have started or that you're excited to start, as far as maybe evolving the way things are going, or new kind of avenues to growing the mission, or I guess serving the mission?
I think one thing that's very important is, yeah, so two parts of it. Number one is finding partnerships out there that haven't been in place before. And so
Mm.
there's one in particular that unfortunately it's gonna be a point where I can't let the cat out of the bag yet,
Right,
but
right.
it will be out there in the news, hopefully in the news, very shortly. And we're very excited about this partnership that's going to be coming up, but also working with other partners to get some of these things accomplished. So that's one part, finding
Hmm.
partnerships.
Yeah.
Number two is creating avenues within our company, even as small as it is, for employees to grow and develop. And so, finding a way to create kind of that stepward movement for employees within the company,
Hmm.
in areas that are needed. So for me, as a fleet manager, safety is primary.
Yeah.
How do we, training, right? Driver training. How do you create these different opportunities for our staff to have positions that are focused on safety, or positions that are focused on training, or other positions out there managing projects, right? How can I do that with a hopefully budget neutral approach, right? So that's
Hmm.
kind of the trick of it, is finding a way to get these positions that allow for a upward progression in your career, but not breaking the budget to get there,
Yeah.
because like we are saying, your budget is, it may not be there next year.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the reality of it. So yeah, that's something. The two things I'm very excited about: getting new partnerships on board and creating a new org kind of chart to show that yes, there's a upward progress possible here.
So how many years have you been in this position for?
I've been in this position for 3 months.
Oh wow! Holy smokes! Wow, you speak so well, and like you have such a great understanding of it. For someone who's only been there for 3 months, like
I,
that's
I
that's
have
pretty
done a
awesome.
I've done a crash course into us, because we've had so many grants to kind of get through, and
Yeah.
just my first day actually starting, there was an event to go to, and I took one of our staff along, because I said they're going to ask questions and I'm not going to know anything, so
Yeah.
I need someone who's been here. But yeah, it's been a pretty deep dive into what we do here, and understanding kind of the dynamics of everything.
So I've always been curious, when you have a person like yourself who starts this new position in I guess a new industry as well, right? And stuff. What is that first, aside from going to this event? What is that first day like for you when you get to the office? Like, what is your number one priority? Is it just to um, get acquainted with the people in the office, or like how? What is it? I think that you strategize of like, okay, this is the first priority as my first day in this position. What does that look like for you, or what did it look like for you?
Yeah, it really is kind of learning, who's who, and who does what. And I think the very first day was also a walkthrough of, okay, we do what now, and
Yeah,
what is the Venn diagram of this entity and this entity? Because from my perspective, we all do the same thing, and it's like understanding how we differentiate ourselves from other providers that are out there and learning. One of my first questions, okay, the typical SWOT, right? So what's our strength? What's our weakness? What's our opportunity? Okay, so what's our threat, right? And understanding, okay, this is what happened here. Me asking questions of, wait, what was that again? Like, why did we do this, or why did this person do this? So understanding kind of those things that have happened before me,
Mm.
and so that really was the first day. It's just a lot of asking questions, a lot of listening to what feedback I could get. Fortunately, our ops manager has been here for like 11 years, so
Oh.
over 11 years. So having that person with the historical knowledge is key for making sure that you understand kind of what you're walking into.
Was there anything that you can remember that either surprised or excited you that you found out in those first days that you weren't expecting?
Um, I don't know if I was really surprised by much. Um, I think I was just so kind of caught up in trying to figure out, okay, based on what I thought I knew, what do I
Hmm.
actually know? And oh wait, that kind of surprises me. Okay, we might have to change a bit, more. Um, yeah, I don't know if anything really surprised me at that point.
I know 3 months is such a short amount of time, but has there been an experience or something that has happened while you've been in this position that has really resonated with you where you went, this is why I'm here. This is why I know I made the right choice to be here. Was there anything like that yet that you've experienced?
I think it's just every interaction that I have with people who know the company, or with people who are even familiar with the company,
Hmm.
are they're like, man, I love what you guys do, right? It's important. Um, but B, it's, hey, I'm really glad you took that opportunity. I think it's going to be a great fit, right?
Hmm.
So I think it's just that it's kind of the combination of almost like affirmation, right, on both sides. Um, I've had a great opportunity to meet new people. We talked a little bit before this about I'm actually a little more comfortable just kind of sitting quietly somewhere as opposed to being right. You're out there and you're speaking and you're presenting. Within my first week, we had the fortune. Oh, what's the first week or first couple weeks? We had the fortune of being a part of the Giving Machine campaign, and so I found myself having to, give this presentation at Pearl Ridge and
Yeah.
Leonard Mall, and with the governor being there, and with um, different representatives, and I'm like, all right, I'm brand new here, so
Yeah.
I will tell you what I know, but I'll tell you that I appreciate being here because we really appreciate the support and all that you all are showing us. But yeah, I think it's just that it's the overall um, welcoming of both the company and me being there that makes me feel good.
Being that you now have to be that person in the forefront, opposite of being in the corner, and in that you are the face of the company, have you felt like you had to go and buy some new wardrobe and have this excuse to up your style game?
I think the wardrobe part has been okay. I worked in healthcare before, so I've had kind of a similar outfit. But I do think if there is a need for a suit, that's going to be something that's a little challenging. Uh, Unfortunately, the suit maker that I used to go to passed away, so he's no longer in
Oh
operation.
no.
I'm not really an off the rack kind of body frame, so that gets
Oh
challenging at
man.
times.
Oh, so if anybody listening is a suit maker,
Yeah,
please hit up
yeah,
Brandon. He might need your help.
yeah,
Hopefully, you don't have to have a suit for anything that you're doing.
yeah. Although I'm not sure. I do have a tux, but the suits they just don't fit anymore.
Oh man.
Yeah. Although it's because I used to be bigger and then now it's smaller, so they look like I'm a small child with my dad's suit on. That I guess that's a good that's a good problem to have.
So was that an intentional decision to lose the weight?
Oh yeah, as you get older, you definitely have to. So it was, back in the days of lifting heavy weights and just being a much
Uh,
bigger person. Now it's not so much the heavy weights, a lot more cardio, and so the weight just kind of falls off.
have you noticed a positive? Because people I think are worried, like, oh, if I'm going to lose strength and such. But by shedding the weight and stuff, have you felt like maybe it's actually a better thing because you don't have to work as hard and carry so much?
Yeah, it's definitely a benefit. I think overall, so um, I've gone through these physical challenges. I think I just get bored right as you get older. So 2 years ago, when I turned 45, I had this challenge of I'm going to do 45,000 push-ups,
Oh my gosh!
4,500 pull-ups, and 450 miles of cardio. Right. Um, I
In
was
what span of time?
the year. So over the course of the
Wow!
year, I was going to do that. I accomplished that part. I was supposed to lose 45 pounds too, but that didn't get there. In that December, as I'm running on the treadmill, I remember watching the marathon right on the screen, and I said, maybe next year I'll do a marathon. So last year's goal was to do a marathon. So that's really how the running and whatnot started. And so that was the goal for last year. So this year I'm still I have that goal in my mind, but I don't want to public commit to it
Oh
yet
no!
because it's
You got to do it. This is the place to do it. This public podcast for all the world to hear that it's real.
it's not
uh,
Facebook committed yet.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So you did the marathon. Was that your first time ever doing the
First
marathon?
time ever.
So what was that experience like? Did you get the black
It
toes and
it
all that?
was hell. No,
Yeah.
I did lose toenails in the process.
Oh gosh, that's so
My marathon
crazy.
experience. I was actually talking about this. I trained for it. I ran up to 18, 20 miles or something on my long runs. I was just wanting to finish, right?
Hmm.
Um, Day of, for whatever reason, I just cramped, and I never had cramping issues all throughout training. I started cramping from mile 10 or 11.
Oh my goodness.
So by the time we hit Hawaii Kai, like I was fully cramping, like to the point where I couldn't stop because as soon as I stopped, it would just fire off.
Oh my gosh.
And I thought I had a perfect nutrition plan throughout, and that just fell through. So the last, miles were pretty torturous. And I finished, and as soon as I get there, my family meets me, and I'm like, yeah, you got to find someone to get me to the medical tent because I'm about to pass out. So then I proceeded to spend the next 90 minutes cramping,
Oh,
vomiting. Sorry if
oh my
there's gonna have to be a warning on this. Um,
god.
yeah, basically just in hell, and but got through it. Have the medal, but the disappointing part was, well, he didn't hit the time that you kind of had in mind, but all throughout that day, I said, just keep going, right? Just finish, just finish.
Man, you really are a very motivated person. From I can see why your parents weren't worried about you. You have this very scary commitment to things. Like that's
Motivated, not so bright.
yeah.
It's kind of a it's kind of a fine line.
Well, your academics showed that you're a bright person, so I think. But oh man, well, congratulations. I hope it was worth it for you. I wouldn't have done what you did, so
Yeah.
I'll
Well,
live
I have
vicariously
this
through you.
shiny medal and a
Yeah.
T-shirt now, but
Was the t-shirt clean or has it still got the vomit stains?
oh no, T-shirt's clean. Yep.
Okay, good. Uh man, Brandon, this has been so great getting to talk with you and getting to know you. And I can see why there's a buzz around an excitement around what you're bringing to not only Aloha Harvest but to the nonprofit sector. And I'm really excited to seeing what the future holds as I mean 3 months in. My goodness, this is crazy. So I really appreciate you taking the time out of what it's obviously going to be has been a really busy time for you to come in and talk story with me. And I'd love for you to share with our listeners and viewers, ways that whether they can get involved in helping support you guys, or even if there are other food places that might want to check you guys out and partner with you. What are some ways that people can connect with you and follow what you're doing?
I think one of the best pieces of advice for anyone who's out there, and I was one of the worst violators of this, is when you talk about food waste, the largest volume of food waste just comes in your own house.
Hmm.
And of course, it's so easy to go to Costco or Sam's Club or whatever big box store you go to and
Yeah.
buy large amounts of food and realize a week later, well, I can't use this, right? I have to toss it
Hmm.
out. And again, I'm a violator of that. I'm trying to get better at it, but it's not easy. Um, that is the first way to approach this mission of reducing food waste is just as a consumer, right? Right,
Hmm.
knowing how much you're going to use, trying not to waste on that level. As far as the actual large process that we do, awareness helps. Just kind of understanding that there is something out there, an entity out there doing this operation. We do appreciate, getting invitations to come and pick up from a party. Unfortunately, we're not a 24-hour operation, so we may not be able to make it out to,
Yeah.
the North Shore at 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
But we do appreciate the opportunity or thought of, hey, how can we actually start to approach some of these areas that we know we're not getting to? So
Hmm.
prepared foods is an area that I think we can do more with. But as we talked about, the food security processes involved is a little bit tighter. So that's something, of course, that we're always going to want to keep track of. Um, if you're interested, go to our website. You can kind of check out different volunteer opportunities right now because we are actually focusing on smaller volunteer activities, maybe not so much a boxing type initiative. There are
Hmm.
opportunities to get out into the community. So we do have a community harvest program. If you have a large fruit tree that you're not quite sure how to manage, that's something that we can do through our gleaning process. Pick those fruits, pick those vegetables, help you, kind of manage that, and then in turn take it to somewhere that they can use it for their food prep and
Oh
get it
my
out
gosh,
there.
that's huge.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's something that,
especially,
yeah,
yeah,
so that's
there's
something
so
that I
many
think,
people here on
yeah,
island that it's become overwhelming for them that they
yeah,
have these out of control fruit trees.
yeah,
And what a great win-win situation. That's awesome. I did not know that you guys had that.
yeah. And I've seen things, even sugar cane. Sugar cane was a
Huh.
new one for me.
Yeah.
I've had sugar cane, right? You go out and I said, what are we gonna do with sugar
Yeah.
cane? We found a partner to go ahead and take that sugar cane. So
Oh,
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll put the link to your website in the show description and such. Um, but are there any other programs or initiatives that you or events maybe that you would want the public to be aware of or be prepared for?
We will have our 25th year gala coming up. And maybe I shouldn't say gala. We're going to call it our 25th year event.
Okay.
That'll be happening in about August. We'll definitely have links up for that as well. Um, Other than that, we are day by day just kind of getting by, as is everyone else, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But as other events come up, we'll definitely put it on our website. So if you're interested in keeping track of any activities, any potential volunteer opportunities. Our team does have links and they'll have social. So at Aloha Harvest, we better make sure that we get
Yeah,
that out correct.
yeah.
Yeah, our team does post different things on social media or on the website to keep everyone up to date on what activities are happening.
I know you said your event's in August, but do you already have an idea of what that event's gonna look like and what it would be what the mission of that event would be for?
So it won't be black tie. So I'm not going to need that tuxedo I was
Oh,
talking about.
good.
Uh, we do plan on keeping it pretty low key. We do plan on doing more of a similar format to what you see at a lot of events where there are multiple food stations that you can go ahead and pick from. We've decided to do it at the Ho'okupu Center. That is the beautiful venue that's out there, Kupu's venue,
Hmm.
over by Kewalo Basin. Um,
Yeah.
and it'll be in August, first week of August. We love the opportunity to kind of show everyone who's been with us for 25 years, hey, come hang with us. Low key, uh, important to the mission, but low key and not the black tie gala event that others may have. That didn't feel like our style.
Yeah. And I think it takes the discomfort away from it when you're comfortable, and you can have more of those intimate and meaningful
Mhm.
interactions. Because I know when I'm dressed up, uh, I'm so uncomfortable that I'm more concentrated on, oh, how do I make sure that this tie isn't choking me, other when I could be really getting into the
Yeah,
conversation with the person across from me. So
yeah,
yeah, it's so hot too.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I know that you've got to go pick up your daughter eventually from practice, so I will let you get going. But Brandon, this has been great. I'm so glad that we got connected and I got to meet you. Um, and and I'm glad to also know that you're one of the good ones from Punahou. And I apologize again for making that horrible mistake earlier on, and that you were still willing to talk to me after I said that you were from Iolani. So thanks a lot.
Nolan, thank you for the time. I really appreciate it. Even though the Iolani thing came out in the
Yeah,
beginning, we'll get over that.
yeah. We'll have a good origin story to
Yeah,
laugh back on years later.